Hey, Jared Foster here, and I just wanted to share this webinar I got on with one of my colleagues with Reach Local, and it talks about YouTube. As we know, a lot of people right now have actually cut their cable and they're moving to more streaming video, and YouTube being the second largest search engines on how to figure something out. This is a strong tactic for marketing. But take a look at this video. I know it's a little bit long, so grab a bottle of wine, dive in, and enjoy it. He's done a phenomenal job explaining the power of YouTube and how it's worked for his clients. So check this out.
I'm Michael Wiggins. I'm the National Brand Manager for Specialty Services. We're kind of the island of misfit toys, if you will, within the national team. A lot of that comes from education. So I've been here for 10 years, and somewhere along my career path, YouTube became my baby. And I was a late adopter to the platform in general. I just kind of didn't understand it, didn't understand how to use it. And then once I did, it kind of encompassed me, consumed way too much of my time. Um, I remember kind of sitting around and family was over for a holiday and my mother walking in to the office. I'm here showing my father a YouTube video and she comes in and says, "You guys too." I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" She says, "Everybody's watching YouTube or Netflix or something. Like nobody just watches regular TV." And I lean around the corner and I'm looking in there. The kids are gathering for lunch, dinner, what have you. And everybody's got a tablet or a phone or something else. Nobody's watching TV. So I asked my wife, like, does anybody watch cable? Because we're paying $200 a month for cable every month. And she laughed, like, when do I have time to do that? I don't watch it. I don't care. So I actually turned our cable TV off, but I didn't tell anybody. And nobody in my house came to ask me why the TV didn't work for 6 months. Saved $200 a month overnight. So that's kind of the long intro into how YouTube became important to me and why it became kind of a passion and my niche and how I started my journey. And I lead with that because really the key to selling anything, not just YouTube, but anything that we do is making it personal and making it relatable and understanding the consumer journey, understanding what people do and how they use it and how you can impact their life. And if you think about the biggest companies with the strongest brand recognition, Apple's now the biggest company in the world, could pay cash for all the companies that as a kid I thought were, unstoppable. And a lot of that comes down to they simply changed the world. They made everything customer centric. They solved problems that everyday people have. So you come out with iTunes, you can download your music, the iPods, you don't have to change CDs. And then wouldn't it be great if it made calls? Wouldn't it be great if I didn't have to carry a laptop? I could use my phone. Amazon, same thing. Where they went from a bookstore to making it the biggest consumer retailer on the planet. And another one of those, obviously near and dear to our heart, is Google. Google has 7 different platforms with over 1 billion active users and a ton of data on those individual users so that they can personalize everything down to your liking. And that gives us a lot of leverage. So we've really seen this evolution take place in everything, not just marketing, but the way that we operate and the way we live our lives. We've moved way past basic demographics and things like your age and gender and that kind of thing. And really what we're looking for in the modern age of trying to reach target consumers and be relatable is we want to get past the basic layer of who people are on the surface of those basic demographics. And we want to reach into who they really are, their deeper inner self. So on the one hand, you could be someone who's 27, lives in New York and 150,000 household income, which means you're probably poor if my understanding of New York economics is right. There's a deeper self there. Just because you trade on Wall Street Monday through Friday doesn't mean you're not listening to metal music and building motorcycles in your garage on the weekend. And one of those things probably drives a lot more passion than the other. And that's the kind of thing that we have to get past when we're looking into the consumer journey and leveraging data so that we can reach people and the things that matter the most to them. So one of the ways Google does this, putting the user at the center of everything, that customer-centric thing, and leveraging all of their different platforms to gain knowledge and understanding about you. If you're going on YouTube every Monday to watch highlights from football and particularly on your team and you ordered season tickets, well, there's a good chance that you're a pretty big fan and they want to show you ads for specific gear and not just NFL gear, but for your team. And customize every element of the consumer journey and all of these facets to you. And this is nothing really new to us. We've kind of been doing this for a while. We've always presented this in this old-fashioned kind of a funnel. You make people aware of it, they discover you, they research a product or a service, and then they convert, and you measure out the ROI. And this is great, and I still use it to this day to kind of break it down for people so that they can visualize and understand what we're talking about. But the reality is this conception of a funnel doesn't exist. Google actually did a study on this and found out that by studying thousands of users' purchasing behaviors, not one of them resembled a funnel. It was an hourglass, a pyramid, a whole bunch of weird shapes, a spider web like the one we saw a minute ago, but not one was a funnel. It wasn't linear. And so I like to think of this entire process as a highway, right? Life is a highway. There's on-ramps, there's off-ramps, there's side roads, there's freeways, and there's a million ways to get from point A to point B, and everybody's going to find their own way to get there. And we just have to find the way that makes the most sense to be relatable and cover these different avenues to getting to that point. This is the slide that John was talking about, which I think if you really pay attention, there's probably about 5 different iterations of it already here. I think we're on the 3rd one already. You think about how you use the internet and put yourself at the center of that circle. Walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. You go to Google Maps to look at everything. You go into Facebook to share with your friends and to see what else is going on in their world. Google Chrome. If Google disappeared from the planet tomorrow, the world would just come to a grinding halt. I mean, how many of us would be able to physically go into the internet to find another browser to figure out what to do, especially if we have an Android phone, because then we wouldn't even have an operating system to make that work. We couldn't message anybody. We couldn't email. It'd be a nightmare. So if we think about how our day-to-day interacts and we put ourselves in the shoes and we identify what kind of audience we're trying to reach, this is realistically what we have to solve for. There is no magic bullet. I'm not going to tell you that YouTube is going to be that silver bullet that's going to solve all your marketing needs, because it simply doesn't exist. The reality is that in the modern world, local businesses are using an average of 7 different marketing tactics to reach their audience. So anybody that thinks that they can just do search or just do social or one thing and that's going to be enough, they're severely underestimating the reality of the modern environment and what this journey looks like. Now, just because you have to use 7 different tactics to reach your audience and fill in all of those gaps and make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, it doesn't mean that it has to be overly complicated. And this is truly our value proposition. Yes, we run campaigns and we can do them efficiently. We can provide reporting, but honest to goodness, at the end of the day, our value prop is taking something that is insanely complicated, making it very simple, very relatable, and helping people to reach their goal by putting them at the center of all of these things and then helping them pick apart these individual pieces to make it all work. So for the rest of this, we're going to talk about specifically how this relates to YouTube, which is a tiny little dot in that grand scheme of things, and see how we can make this work for our clients and for their consumers who are trying to reach them. So if you think back in the past, and I say past, I mean, I've lived through this, but if you go back and look all the way through, you had print advertising, the 1800s, radio comes along, and radio was a big deal for a long time until television comes along. And TV has been king for 50 plus years of advertising. And the idea was very, very simple. You spray and pray to as many people as possible and hope your message reaches people and hope that they care about it. And there's no real way of knowing. It was just kind of blind luck or faith, if you will. And for video, you know, this used to be the modern living room of multiple generations of people sitting down, having to watch TGIF. If you're my age, you remember that, you know what that means. You can name the shows that we're on, and watching the commercials that come with them. And that's simply not the case anymore. And that's because of this evolution of changing things based on technology to make things very user-centric and targeting things specific to them. So technology, things like Google, allows us to simply reach out to people at a very personal level. We can reach out to them by their device. We can reach out to them, by their gender, but we can reach out to them by their behaviors, by their interests, by all of these different things. And we can target them in a coordinated effort across a bunch of different platforms. So we can actually take our search history and things, and we can parlay that into social ads. We can parlay that into video or display ads or email targeting and make all of those things work in one coordinated effort. And that's important because in the modern living room, The picture I was describing when we opened this is honestly what my living room looks like now. Not as clean, but this is pretty much it. Everybody has kind of their own device. They can watch what's interesting to them, their own particular content. Oftentimes, sometimes perhaps not the healthiest thing, but in one room together, watching our own thing, doing our own thing, but not necessarily all sharing one screen or one particular thing complete with ads and commercials. So as this pattern of behavior has changed and as people have adopted new behaviors and new things, we have reached the digital age of media consumption. Top 3 things people do in a day is they go to work, they sleep, and they consume digital content. It's like 5 hours per day in the United States. And this reaches more people than any other platform. And half of us are doing it on our phone, not even putting on the TV anymore. I know that the estimate here says by 2025 that half of viewers under 32 won't pay for a TV service. I don't know if we're not already there yet. The number of cord cutters is reaching kind of a new high. And now with this new expansion of a la carte streaming options, who knows where that's going to take us next. But YouTube has kind of been the forefront of leading this wave and being one of the biggest players in this space. And if you think about this from an advertising perspective, because that's what we're here to do. I don't know how many people have seen this video. I know there's 25 plus million views, and I'm probably 300,000 or 400,000 of them. Carpool Karaoke with Adele. When this aired, 1.5 million people saw this on television. But by comparison, 42 million people watched it on YouTube. They didn't watch it live on TV. They watched it on their own device, whether it be their phone, their tablet, what have you, at their own leisure. And the reason this is kind of a big deal is, number one, this is a very clear indicator that TV's day in the sun as the gold standard of advertising and connecting is over. We've moved to the digital world and we've moved to the streaming era. And number two, from an advertising perspective, this offers up a whole new level of opportunity, because anyone who wanted to advertise to their particular target audience and thought, yeah, the Late Late Show would be great. I'd love it if we could show an ad during Carpool Karaoke, what have you. Great. You're going to have to reach out to a network. Then you're going to have to go to a local affiliate. Then you're going to have to buy air, possibly on that show. No guarantee it's going to be during that segment. You're going to pay a hefty premium for it. And the reality is, all you're going to know at the end of it is, what is the demographics of people watching that? What did the Nielsen data say? Pray that they didn't DVR and fast forward through it, or they didn't get up and go grab popcorn or whatever else. Whereas if they watched it on YouTube, you don't have to even necessarily target this video. You can target your exact audience and skip the content altogether. It doesn't matter if they're watching this, cat videos, or what have you. You're reaching directly to the consumer and taking the guesswork out of it. And the best part is, you're doing it directly with their attention and putting the power in their hands that if they're not interested, they skip it. You don't even have to pay for it. So that's the part I think that really is the most appealing to us as marketers and to our clients as investors in this media. Video ads increase purchase intent more than any other digital ad. And if you stop and you let that sink in, that means search, display, email, everything else, social, all of it. And that's a pretty powerful statement, that video would have more impact on your intention to purchase a product even than search. And YouTube is the #1 site for influencing purchase decisions, more so than Facebook, more so than Instagram. And that is because of the consumption habit that you have combined with the TrueView platform. So why else would this be the case? Why would video all of a sudden be such a strong platform compared to these other avenues? And part of it is, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, then how much is a video worth? And when I do these presentations live, I always like to grab people and we play this game a little bit interactive, but I think most people can relate. If you've ever really been excited about a movie and you go and you tell your best friend about it, this movie's amazing, it's got these people in it, and here's what happens, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but it's the best thing I've ever seen. And half the time you get this blank stare on their face while they patronize you and say, yeah, that's great, and maybe I'll check it out. And they might be super polite, but you can just tell they don't have the level of excitement you have. And the reality is, words can never do justice to what a picture or video can do. And that's the difference between a text ad or an image on social post that's caught in your stream and video. And I actually, when I was looking this up, the original time that I wrote this particular presentation, I wanted to know what the greatest movie trailer of all time was. And courtesy of USA Today, it is the trailer for Alien in 1979. If you haven't seen the trailer, feel free to go watch it. There is no description that any person can give you in words that will reach the intensity level of watching that trailer, which ironically has none. There are no words in the trailer. But at the end of that trailer, for whatever it is, 30 seconds, I forget, you will know at the end of it, you are on board for this ride and you want to see this movie, or you're out one way or another. And that's perfectly fine, because that's what they're wanting to do, is either get you excited or let you know it's not for you and put that power in your hands to decide. And YouTube particularly gives us that exact thing, which is part of why I like it and part of what makes this platform so strong. Number one, your ads are always in a prime position. Typically, it takes up the entire screen and the volume is turned on. When you're scrolling through Facebook, 80% of us do it with the volume turned off. When you're going to watch content on YouTube, you turn the volume on so that you can hear it. The ad takes up the full page. And most importantly, they give you the power to skip it. Now, there are formats of YouTube TrueView ad or other ads that you can do non-skippable in those things. It's a small percentage, and that's a conversation for another day. But for TrueView itself, giving people the power to skip things they're not interested in, and more importantly, giving advertisers the ability not to pay for that. Whatever you get up into that 30-second mark is free. If they're not interested, we don't want you to pay for it. That's a powerful tool. And what we find is that people are 75% more engaged when they have that power in their hands to sit there and they can skip anytime they want. And the only thing stopping them from hitting that button is if they want to hear what you have to say next. Coincidentally, in another training for another day, we've actually found that longer ads actually perform better than shorter ads because people are invested in the story. They tend to hang on for the ride. So going back and comparing this to TV, the return on investment for YouTube and digital, because you're only paying for ads when people watch the entire video or 30 seconds, because you're giving them that power, because the inventory is honestly so cheap. There is much more inventory than there is demand, and it is incredibly cheap. YouTube's averages, last time I pulled the data was 2013, was 13 cents per completed view. We as Reach Local were averaging 8 cents. I'll typically try to update that into the year. So honestly, we can get you a cheaper cost per view than if you did it on your own, statistically. So fun fact on this as well, I found out this Sunday that if I DVR a football game and I fast forward through all of the huddles, commercials, and breaks, you can watch an entire football game in under 30 minutes. So if you get nothing else out of this today, congratulations, I just saved you 2.5 hours a week. So let's talk about the part that matters to our clients the most, right? What is this? How do we actually go from videos to conversions? Because anybody that's actually done a YouTube campaign in the past will look at this and go, well, I don't see this direct line of sight in conversions. It's very, very hard for me to prove that leads are coming out of YouTube. And if you haven't sold this before, I don't want to set you up with the wrong expectation going in. This is not something where you're going to set the expectation and say, this is going to be a lead monster that's just going to drive tons of direct business and engagement, and you're going to see it. It's not quite how it works, and we'll dive into that a little bit more later. But we know that this is going to drive purchase intent more than any other platform. So let's kind of look at how that works. Anybody that recognizes this slide ought to be having a good chuckle. If you haven't seen Glengarry Glen Ross by now, your sales and marketing training is 100% incomplete. I actually had to watch it for a college marketing course when I was at Middle Tennessee. It really is this simple. So ABC, always be closing. And then the AIDA model, I think in the movie, it was actually attention, not awareness. That's okay. Interest, desire, and action. So let's put this into practical application. And I like to use myself as a guinea pig for everything so that we can actually look at this and see how this works. About 5 years ago, Chris Adams was our VP at the time for national. Chris Adams went on Facebook, posted a picture of a red Jeep he bought for his condo. And I looked at it, saw the post, and hit like. Said congratulations or something. I always loved Jeeps, always wanted one, never had one, hadn't thought much of it. I hit the like button. So something interesting happened in that moment. Facebook realized that I liked this post and went to study what it was about it and sees that there's Jeep mentioned there and draws that connection to an advertiser who then comes back and shows me an ad. So they come back and show me an ad. And like the gullible person that I am, I turned around and clicked on it. So I click on it to go see how much these things cost these days, what's going on, what have you. Now, when I do that, that opens up in my Chrome browser. So now Google's in on it. Google takes a look at it, says, where did this come from? What did you do? Okay, let's go back and look. Huh, interested in Jeeps, I see. Cool, we'll make a note of that. So now that I've gone from Facebook's ecosystem into Google's, and I'm letting everybody in on this thing that I'm interested in that have no intention of buying, a couple days later, I'm watching YouTube, which is way too much of my lifetime. And I end up seeing ads for Jeep financing, Jeep promotions, all of these other things around me. And they browbeat me until I went from, yeah, I'm aware that Jeeps are a thing and I've always been interested in them. But I start seeing recommendations in my feed for videos. I'm seeing ads before completely unrelated videos. I'm watching Mark Rober and I'm seeing a Jeep ad. All of these different things until I hit that point of desire. I am convinced that if I don't have a Jeep, my life is incomplete because I'm an American and that's what we do. So as I reach this point of desire, now I'm actively researching. I'm going to check out, prices and financing and all of these promotions and other things. And I'm doing this entirely inside of Google, and I may be clicking on ads along the way, but I don't directly do anything or take action. It takes me another 2 weeks of begging and pleading and bartering with my wife before she finally just says, if you'll just shut up about it, you should go buy one. And so I did. 2 weeks later, I bought a Jeep. There's the picture of me and Mini-Me taking it home that day, 2 weeks after discovering Chris Adams' Facebook post. Now, that dealer has no line of sight that I discovered a Facebook post, discovered an ad, went to Google, and went through all of these things to get there. But yet I did. And it's kind of important because as much of a sucker as I am, and everybody makes fun of me for this, the reality is 1 in 4 people who go onto YouTube and look up information on a car, truck, or other vehicle with the notion of researching it, 1 in 4 of them pop up within a dealership. So I'm not alone. There's 160 of us on this call. There are 39 other suckers out there like me. Funny enough, one of the other stats I got when I was at a Google event was they made the claim that, oh my phone's lighting up every time I say their name. They made a claim that after watching fashion and beauty content, nearly 1 in 2 viewers make a purchase, 1 in 3 head to a retail store. And I kid you not, I was sitting there looking at this thinking, that is bogus. There is no way in the world that can be true. As I sat there and was fidgeting with my Ridge wallet, which I bought using a promo code after one of my favorite YouTubers did a review. So fashion and beauty content, review, promo code, made a purchase. So there's about 79 other suckers in here like me in that regard too. And the real point in this is I think if we all sit down and we're honest with ourselves and we really put ourselves at the center of this, and anybody else too, business owners, marketing directors, CMOs, they're all human beings. And if you sit down and you think about how you use the internet, the things that actually drove you to making a decision, if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize at some point you made the same exact, you have followed the same path. You may get there a little bit different route, but ultimately there's a catalyst somewhere that takes you from your attention to the interest to that pivotal point of desire that causes you to take action. Now I'm going to go through a counterpoint and what happens if we don't do this. And thanks to Christina Miette. Christina was like my work wife for a few years. She used to work on the specialty services team before taking over healthcare. Christina and I used to go and do this roadshow traveling to Jewish community centers, one of our clients, and helping them with their marketing and giving them insights and things. And we would travel together all the time. And one day we stumbled upon something that was kind of interesting because Christina had been working with the JCCs for 5 years. She's helped them write their text ads. She's helped them swap out their Facebook ads. She's given them recommendations on things. She's been running their campaigns for years. Great relationship with them. We're certainly aware that they exist and we're interested in not only their business, but their success because they're a client and we have a great relationship. It wasn't until year 5 of this relationship that one of the JCCs decided to try YouTube. We did an event, we talked to them, they bought in, they decided to try to go and create some content on their own. They sent it to us to look it over. And by us, I mean Christina. And she watches this ad for their kids' summer camp. And as she's reviewing this content and looking at it, she's realizing, oh my gosh, their kids get to do this and that. And all of these activities look great. These kids look stoked. My kids are miserable when I drop them off at camp in the morning. I kind of want my kids to be able to do that. 5 years of working with these people, she had the attention, she had the interest. There was never that critical piece that pushed it over the edge to desire. And once that blank was filled in, what does she do? You take action, you go enroll your kids in summer camp. And I think that's the biggest thing that we sometimes overlook, that we as consumers are emotional beings and we are all human beings. And once this becomes an emotional decision, people tend to take action. So the difference between a 2-week buying cycle on a very high involved purchase decision and a 5-year buying decision was having one piece of that marketing mix missing that turned that into a desire and turning that into action. So as we look forward here, what can YouTube do for you or for your clients or in general? And a lot of this will be a more technical conversation for kind of a later training, but this is typically where I start the discussion with all of our clients as it pertains to YouTube. What is the gap you're trying to solve? What is the piece you're trying to fill? Is it that people don't know that you exist? You know, are you the new player? Do you have a new product and nobody's ever heard of you? If so, then ad recall and brand awareness are going to be important to you. And we're going to look to drive things like the lowest cost per completed view we can get, as many views as possible, and a higher view through rate. That's great. Maybe you are the small fish in a big pond and you need to eat into the market share of other competitors. Then brand interest and consideration or even favorability are going to be for you. And that's where we're going to start having a conversation that leads them to what we're going to look to accomplish is a higher view through rate and ultimately as many clicks as we can get or even view through conversions. And then lastly on that list is purchase intent. This one is a little bit different. And this is one that I would definitely steer away from barring, more technical conversations because you're not directly going to see leads like you do in paid search. You can see view through conversions, people that watch a video and then they come back to your website after the fact. They heard about you, they're aware of you, and now they're coming back. And YouTube for Action is something that's in beta that may be rolled out later on down the line, which will fill in that action piece a bit more. But typically when I'm starting conversations with people, I want to make sure that I am putting their needs at the center of our focus and trying to solve for the right problem. And this is a good way to simply look at that and say, what is the problem we're trying to solve so that we can set the proper expectations for them. So one of the things that we can do, and this is a big asterisk beside it, is YouTube does brand lift studies. And one of the things that they found in studying this, Fortune 100 brands, 94% of them drove a lift with an average of 80% lift in ad recall. 94%. I don't know that we have a 94% success rate with any solution that we offer. And that's a powerful tool. Similarly, if you look at after 800 brand lift studies, 65% of campaigns drove a significant lift with an average of 13%. So quite simply, the medium works. Now, diving in and doing a brand lift study is a whole other thing that typically requires pretty hefty budgets. So I wouldn't put too much focus on that particular narrative, but just know that this is something that we can have in our pocket that does work. And as a result, out of the top 100 brands, all 100 used YouTube last year. And I've actually gone and looked at this. I didn't go all the way through the entire list, but as best I can tell, this still holds true even as of this year. So one final piece as we're going through this, we're talking about trying to leverage video to capture people's attentions and interests and ultimately reaching that desire phase and always be closing. There's a really important piece in the consumer journey step that we often overlook, and that's 48% of purchasers will switch between brand and generic terms at some point in their journey. And that means they're going to go from, I have a problem that I want to solve or a need that I want to fill. And it goes from, what is it, to who can help me do that. And so if you think this through, 1 in 2 people are going to go from what to who. What is going to drive them to make that decision? What's going to drive them to say, instead of this, I'm going to go to this exact person to fill that buying need? Now, they may go to a host of other places. We as Reach Local have always touted that we reach 98% of the places that people search online. And we do. But there's a very big asterisk to that we need to keep in mind. And that is, YouTube is the second largest search engine right after Google. It is bigger than Bing, Yahoo, Ask, and all of the others combined. Quite simply, when people need information quickly, they find video is the simplest form to do it. And so by leaving the second largest search engine out of the equation, there is a huge hole in our marketing mix. So the big takeaway out of all of this, we know that it's a powerful tool. We know that the leverage is there, but also we have to make certain that we don't leave any gaps within our marketing structure that cause people to miss out on that need of filling that desire. And we have to always be closing.